AITA for refusing to lend my mother my house for her vacation, even though it upset my entire family. I, 32M, have been living in my own apartment for the past 6 years. I work as a software engineer, and while I wouldn't say I'm wealthy, I do have a stable life and a comfortable living situation. My mother, 58F, has always been the type to ask for favors, sometimes unreasonable ones, but I've tried to set boundaries as I've gotten older. My father passed away about 10 years ago, and she has lived alone since then. My siblings, 26F and 30M, are still living with her part-time because they are students and don't have much space of their own. Recently, my mother called me out of the blue and told me that she wanted to take a long vacation to Europe this summer. At first, I thought she just meant she wanted to travel and stay in hotels, but then she dropped the bomb. She wanted to stay in my apartment for the entire month while I was at work. Her reasoning was that it would save her money and that she would just take care of the place while I'm gone. She said she'd even cook and clean help out. I immediately felt uncomfortable. My apartment isn't big. It's a 2-bedroom unit in a relatively quiet building, and I like having my privacy. I also work long hours and sometimes odd shifts, and I didn't want someone living in my space constantly. I told her that I wasn't comfortable with her staying for an entire month and suggested she consider renting a short-term Airbnb or a hotel instead. I even offered to help her find a place or split the cost of one nearby. She didn't take that well. She started saying things like, "You're my son. Don't you love me enough to let me stay?" And, "I can't believe you'd rather spend money on me when you have a spare room." She also brought up that when my siblings had friends over during college, she had no problem letting them stay, which I thought was irrelevant. I tried to explain that letting friends crash for a few days is very different from having your mother live in your space for a month. After a few days of arguing, she called my siblings and complained that I was selfish and ungrateful. Apparently, my brother and sister agreed that I was being unreasonable, even though I had made it clear I was willing to help her find other options. They started pressuring me, saying I should just sacrifice for Mom, and that it wasn't fair to deny her this. Things came to a head when she showed up at my apartment unannounced one weekend, insisting that she had packed for her trip and was ready to stay, and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. I told her firmly that she could not stay and that she needed to leave. She left angrily, and I later found out she had texted my siblings telling them I was kicking her out of her own family. Now my siblings are upset with me. They say I'm being rude, ungrateful, and selfish, and that I should put my mother's happiness first. My mother hasn't spoken to me since that weekend and keeps posting passive-aggressive messages about family unity on social media. My friends all tell me I was right to set boundaries, but the family drama has made me start doubting myself. I don't see why I should have to give up my home for an entire month, especially when I offered alternatives and try to help in other ways. I understand that my mother wanted a vacation, but I feel like she and my siblings are ignoring my needs and my right to my own space. I don't want to create a huge family feud, but I also don't want to feel pressured into hosting someone for an entire month in my apartment. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my mother stay in my apartment for her vacation, even though it has upset my siblings and her. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep creating more great content. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Thanks so much for your support. AITA for refusing to financially support my younger sister's dream project, even though my family thinks I should. I, 34M, have a younger sister, Lily, 27F, who has always had big ideas. Growing up, our parents were fairly hands-off in terms of encouraging responsibility, so Lily became very used to getting support whenever she asked. Our parents, who are in their late 50s, are very proud of her and have always emphasized following your dreams as her top priority. I, on the other hand, have always been more pragmatic. I work in tech, have a decent salary, and have had to manage my own bills and expenses since I was 18 because our parents never really taught financial literacy. A few weeks ago, Lily called me out of the blue to tell me she had a life-changing opportunity. She's been working various odd jobs and is extremely passionate about creative projects, painting, pottery, small-scale installations, but nothing that has been financially stable. Now, She wants to open a tiny, immersive art cafe in our city. She described it as a combination of an art studio, cafe, and performance space where people can come, drink coffee, interact with the art, and maybe even host small workshops. Her vision is huge, but her business plan is not. She told me she's already signed a lease on a space downtown and needs around $25,000 to cover renovations, equipment, initial stock, and permits. She then asked me if I could loan her the money. I paused because $25,000 is not trivial. I have savings, but I'm not rolling in cash, and I'm very cautious about lending large sums to friends or family because I've seen it go wrong multiple times. I asked her what her plan was to generate revenue, and she said she had a few ideas, but mostly expected to take off once people experience it. I tried to explain that starting a business, especially in something niche and expensive, carries huge financial risk. She argued that I should just support her because she's my sister and that I would be helping a life-changing movement in our community. I told her I wasn't comfortable lending her that kind of money. I explained that I couldn't risk my savings on something that is essentially speculative and that I wouldn't be able to sleep at night worrying about it. She started crying on the phone, saying I didn't believe in her dreams and that I had always been the practical one in the family who never supported her passions. I reminded her that I'd always encouraged her to pursue her interests, but had never guaranteed financial backing. After this, she went to our parents and told them I refused to support her project. Both of them confronted me together, saying I was being selfish, that I should help my sister because this is the opportunity of a lifetime, and that family supports each other. They even said I should just treat it as a gift, not a loan, if I truly cared about her. I reminded them that $25,000 is a lot of money and that I can't just give it away without considering my own financial security. I also reminded them that Lily has been asking for financial support all her life, and I have always been the only one who tried to instill financial responsibility in her. They accused me of being cold and unsympathetic. Lily has since stopped speaking to me and has been posting about her crushing family trauma on social media, framing me as the villain who refused to believe in her. Mutual friends have been messaging me, asking if I really didn't help her, and it's been awkward explaining that I simply don't feel comfortable handing over $25,000 to someone with no solid plan. I also learned that she applied for multiple grants and crowdfunding campaigns, hoping someone else would fund her project. Our parents are not happy about this because apparently I should have been the first choice. I feel conflicted because, yes, she is my sister and I love her, but at the same time, I'm not responsible for underwriting every risky venture she comes up with. I also have my own financial goals, like buying a house and paying off student loans, and giving her $25,000 would set me back significantly. I suggested alternative ways to support her, like helping her write a realistic business plan, connecting her with potential investors, or even small financial contributions that wouldn't jeopardize my stability. But none of that seems to satisfy her. Friends are split. Some say I'm wrong for not supporting family, while others say I'm reasonable for not risking a huge sum of money on an unproven business. The tension with my family is escalating. My parents keep bringing it up at every gathering, and Lily refuses to speak to me. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to give my sister $25,000 for a business that has a high likelihood of failing, even though my family says I should? I honestly feel like I'm protecting both my money and my sanity, but part of me wonders if I'm being overly harsh. I want to support her, but not in a way that will hurt me financially or make me feel taken advantage of. Has anyone else had this kind of situation with a sibling where their dreams clash with your ability or willingness to support them financially? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiance stay at my house, even though he was family. So, this is going to be a long one, and I need to set the scene properly. I, 28F, live in a small but really well-kept apartment in a city a few hours away from my family. My sister, Emily, 30F, has been engaged for about 6 months to a guy named Mark, 32M. I met him a handful of times, and to be honest, I've never really clicked with him. He's polite enough, but very controlling in ways that subtly annoy me. He interrupts people mid-sentence, tries to steer conversations, and from the way Emily talks about him, he's very set in his ways. But I try to ignore all that and keep a polite distance. Anyway, last week, Emily called me completely frazzled. Apparently, she and Mark were coming into town for a wedding and had planned to stay with their cousin because the cousin has a guest room. But the cousin's house flooded due to some plumbing disaster, and now they had nowhere to stay. Emily, in a panicked voice, asked if they could stay at my apartment for 3 nights. She said she didn't want to impose, but Mark really wanted a place to crash. Here's where I should explain my setup. My apartment is a small 2-bedroom with 1 bathroom. I live alone, and my home is my sanctuary. I work from home, and my routines are very important to me. I'm introverted, and I honestly feel stressed when I have people in my space for long periods. My sister knows this. I've had friends crash before, but it's always been a weekend, and I'm very upfront about boundaries. I immediately told Emily I didn't think it would work. I tried to explain politely that my apartment is small, I work from home, and having guests for multiple nights is really stressful for me. I also said I didn't feel comfortable having Mark stay here because, frankly, I didn't trust the dynamic between him and me. I explained that he tends to push boundaries, and I didn't want to feel tense for 3 days. I even offered to help them find a cheap Airbnb or a nearby hotel and promised I could drive them to the wedding venue, so transportation wasn't an issue. Emily got really upset. She accused me of being selfish and not family-oriented. She said that since Mark is basically family now, I should just suck it up for a few nights. She tried to guilt me by reminding me of how I stayed with her and her ex-boyfriend when I visited out of town last year, saying I owed her this. I reminded her that it wasn't the same situation. Her ex-boyfriend was visiting, not staying permanently with me while I was trying to work, and it was only 2 nights. She then started saying that Mark would feel unwelcome anywhere else and that I was putting my comfort above my family. I tried to stay calm and repeated that I wanted to help, but couldn't host them. She got louder, saying things like, "If you cared about me or Mark, you just let him stay. We're family." Eventually, she hung up, still clearly upset. I thought that was the end of it, but then she texted me that night. The text was basically saying that she and Mark were disappointed in me and that I was being petty, rude, and unkind. She implied that I was choosing my comfort over family loyalty and called me a bad sister. I didn't respond because I knew responding would just escalate it. The next day, she showed up at my door unannounced. I opened it, surprised and frustrated. She immediately started lecturing me about being cold and selfish. I tried to explain again that I can't host them, but she wouldn't let me finish. Mark was standing there awkwardly, kind of smirking, and Emily said, "He deserves a place to stay. It's not that hard, and you're making it complicated." I felt cornered. I told them firmly that it wasn't possible and they needed to leave. Emily started crying and saying I didn't care about her feelings or Mark's, and that I was choosing my own comfort over their crisis. After about 20 minutes of back and forth, they finally left, but now my phone has been blowing up with texts from Emily and messages from other family members. My parents are upset too, saying I should have just made it work for a couple of nights. My sister has not spoken to me since, and I've been feeling extremely stressed and guilty, but at the same time, I feel like I did nothing wrong. I'm uncomfortable with having people in my space for multiple nights, especially someone I don't feel comfortable around, and I offered alternatives. I also can't shake the feeling that if I had said yes, I would have felt trapped and resentful the entire time. I value my boundaries, and I don't think that makes me a bad sister. But everyone is telling me I'm overreacting and being unnecessarily harsh. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my apartment, even though it was an emergency and they call me family. I should also add one detail. Emily hinted that other family members might be talking to me about my attitude and that Mark might say something negative about me to everyone if I don't compromise. I haven't blocked anyone, but I'm trying to limit communication because I feel like anything I say will be used against me. This whole situation has left me anxious and second-guessing myself. I honestly want to support my sister, but I can't let my home feel like a place where I'm stressed and uncomfortable for several days, especially with someone I don't get along with. I want to know if I'm really being unreasonable. Should I have just given in to their request, even though I was uncomfortable? Or is it okay to say no and enforce boundaries, even with family? The last thing I want is to be labeled selfish in front of my entire family, but I also don't think I did anything wrong. AITA for refusing to let my sister's children stay at my house after she kicked them out, even though my parents are furious with me. I, 32M, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 28F. We grew up in a chaotic household where our parents were often more concerned with appearances than our actual well-being. I moved out as soon as I could, finish college, and now I have a fairly stable life. I work a demanding job in finance and live alone in a small but comfortable apartment. I'm careful about my routines, and I like things orderly. My sister, on the other hand, has always been more impulsive, and honestly, I don't know if she's ever held a steady job for more than a year. Emily has 2 children, Lily, 7F, and Max, 5M. She's been divorced for a few years, and while I get along with my niece and nephew, I'm constantly frustrated with how irresponsible Emily is. She frequently asks me for money, expects me to babysit on short notice, and often complains about her financial situation. I've helped in the past, but I draw the line at having children in my home without proper planning. The incident happened last weekend. Emily got into a fight with her landlord, who claimed she had violated some rules regarding noise and subletting. She immediately told my parents that she was effectively homeless and that her kids needed a place to stay. I was visiting my parents when she called, and before I could even respond, she had already started packing bags for Lily and Max. I told her flat out that my apartment wasn't an option. I explained that it's small, that I work long hours, and that I can't take on full-time childcare for her kids, especially at the last minute. She got upset, accusing me of being heartless and not being family. My parents overheard part of the conversation and immediately started pressuring me. My mom said, "Your sister's kids are your nieces and nephew. You can't just turn them away. What if something happens to them?" My dad added, "You're lucky she even asked you for help instead of letting them sleep on the streets." I stood my ground. I even offered to help in other ways, like sending money for a hotel or connecting her with local resources, but my parents said that wasn't good enough. Emily called later that day, sobbing and begging me to reconsider, and I refused. Later that evening, my parents went to Emily's apartment to mediate, and apparently, things got heated. I wasn't there, but I got texts from both my mom and dad accusing me of being selfish and heartless. My mom said, "You have no idea what it's like to be a parent, and now you're punishing innocent children for their mother's mistakes." My dad said, "You think you're better than the rest of us? You're literally leaving children on the street." I understand why my parents are upset, but from my perspective, I cannot suddenly become a full-time caregiver for 2 young kids, especially with such little notice. I also feel like Emily has relied on me too many times over the years, and this was just the tipping point. I have offered help that doesn't involve me taking the children into my home, but my family sees that as insufficient. The conflict escalated further when Emily started posting about it on social media, painting me as the cruel uncle who turned his back on his family. Some of my mutual friends reached out to me, confused about what happened. I tried to explain my side, but it seems like most people are siding with Emily, saying that children should always come first and that family obligations are absolute. Now, my parents are barely speaking to me. Emily refuses to even respond to messages, and Lily and Max are currently staying with a friend of Emily's who is overwhelmed and struggling to manage both kids. I've had a lot of people online telling me I'm wrong for refusing to take in my nieces and nephew, but I honestly feel like I made a responsible decision. My home isn't equipped for children. I don't have the energy or time to care for them, and I can't fix the situation with money alone. I'm also worried that if I had let them stay, it would set a precedent for Emily expecting me to step in every time she encounters a problem. I know my parents see this as family loyalty, but I see it as enabling bad behavior. I'm torn because I love my nieces and nephew, but I also have boundaries that I feel are reasonable. Since the incident, my parents have been talking about cutting me off from the family entirely if I don't make this right, and Emily has made it clear that she will not forgive me. My friends are divided. Some say I did the right thing. Others say I should have put the kids first no matter what. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's children stay at my apartment after she kicked them out, even though my parents are furious with me for it. AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her boyfriend to my wedding after what he did at my engagement party. I'm 28F, getting married next spring, and for the most part, everything has been going smoothly with planning. I'm engaged to a wonderful man, Matt, 30M, and while weddings are stressful, I was really looking forward to celebrating with our friends and family. My sister, Jenna, 26F, has always been a bit dramatic, but I thought I could handle her antics. What I didn't expect was having to deal with something that could potentially ruin my big day before it even happens. A little backstory. Jenna has been dating her boyfriend, Alex, 27M, for about 6 months. They met through mutual friends, and at first, I was cautiously optimistic because she seemed happy. However, Alex has a reputation for being impulsive and not thinking through the consequences of his actions. I didn't personally witness any of this until our engagement party, which took place 3 months ago. The engagement party was held at a small rented venue with around 50 guests. We were careful with the guest list because we wanted it to be intimate, but we also didn't want to upset family dynamics. Everything was going well until Alex showed up. He immediately started drinking excessively. He was loud, making inappropriate jokes, and then decided to teach everyone a lesson in drinking games. By the end of the night, he had pushed a few people into the pool, including my aunt. She's fine, just soaked and embarrassed, spilled wine on the wedding dress I had been trying on as part of a pre-wedding showcase, and somehow got my cousin's dog to escape from its crate. The dog ran around the neighborhood for an hour before we found it, causing a panic among several families with small children. At one point, he even tried to convince my grandmother to do karaoke with him, despite her being very shy and having a bad hip. She ended up tripping and bruising herself. No one was seriously injured, but it was chaotic and it was incredibly embarrassing. After the party, I sat down with Jenna to talk about it. I tried to be gentle and explain that while I understand people let loose at parties, Alex's behavior was out of control and dangerous. I told her that I couldn't risk him repeating something like that at the wedding, where there will be more alcohol, more people, and a lot more going on. I suggested maybe keeping him off the guest list, or at least limiting his drinking, but she got extremely defensive. She claimed I was overreacting and that Alex was just fun, and that everyone was exaggerating. Fast forward to now, we're finalizing the guest list, and Jenna brought up that she wants to invite Alex. I told her that after what happened at the engagement party, I don't feel comfortable having him at the wedding. She lost it. She accused me of being controlling, not trusting her judgment, and even said I was trying to ruin her relationship. She threatened not to come to the wedding if Alex isn't invited. I reminded her that the wedding is my and Matt's day, and that it's not about her or her boyfriend, but she still refuses to compromise. Our parents are split on the issue. My mom thinks I'm being reasonable because Alex's behavior was reckless and could have serious consequences at a formal event. My dad, however, believes I should invite him because it's my sister, and he thinks I'm being harsh. Some friends have chimed in and said it's my prerogative to choose the guest list, but I can't shake the guilt. Jenna has started posting on social media, hinting that I'm being unfair and painting me as the mean sister who won't let her happiness exist. I keep reminding myself that this is my wedding and Matt and I are the ones who have to feel comfortable with every guest, but every time I bring it up, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around my sister and family. Matt is fully on my side and agrees that Alex is a liability, but I can tell the tension is getting to everyone. I also worry that by not inviting him, I might be escalating the conflict and making it harder for my family to enjoy the wedding. On the other hand, inviting him could lead to disaster, and I just don't see how I could forgive myself if something serious happened because I didn't set boundaries. So, Reddit, AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her boyfriend to my wedding after what he did at the engagement party. I feel like I'm making a responsible choice, but the amount of guilt and pressure from my family is making me question myself. I just want my wedding day to be joyful and safe, not another fiasco. I've tried reasoning with her, but she refuses to see it from my perspective. Is standing my ground really wrong, or am I being too rigid? AITA for refusing to cover my cousin's wedding costs after my aunt insisted I should. So I, 29F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I have a stable job in tech and live comfortably in my city apartment. My extended family, on the other hand, is not exactly flush with money. They have a tendency to dramatize finances and throw emotional guilt trips around, which I've tried to navigate carefully over the years. My cousin, whom I'll call Rachel, 27F, got engaged about a year ago. Her fiancé comes from a wealthy family, and they have made it clear that they want a big, expensive wedding. We're talking luxury venue, designer dress, multiple catered meals, and a live band. I was initially excited because I genuinely like Rachel, but I had no idea what I was getting into financially. Fast forward a few months, and my aunt, Rachel's mom, calls me. She starts talking about how families should help each other out, and subtly hints that since I earn a decent salary, it would be great if I could contribute to some of the wedding costs. She frames it like I'd be helping out my little cousin have the wedding of her dreams. I was taken aback because I had assumed everyone would contribute within their means, not expect me to front any part of it. I asked what exactly she wanted me to cover. She rattled off a list that included paying for the flowers, a portion of the venue deposit, and the photographer, which together added up to about $5,000. I explained politely that while I could maybe help with a smaller gift, I couldn't afford or justify covering thousands of dollars. My aunt didn't respond well. She said, "But you make more than everyone else, and it would be a shame for Rachel to miss out on anything." I tried to reason with her, saying that I didn't think it was fair to put that much financial pressure on me, but she kept insisting. The situation got worse. When Rachel found out I wasn't going to contribute, she called me and was clearly upset. She said she had counted on me to make sure certain things happened at the wedding, and I felt cornered. I explained again that I couldn't cover such large amounts and that it wasn't fair to me to do so, but she cried and said, "If you loved me, you'd help." I felt a mix of guilt and frustration because I do love my cousin, but not in a way that included me going broke to make her wedding perfect. I tried to compromise. I offered to help with something smaller, like buying the bridesmaids gifts or helping with a smaller decoration item. That was still met with resistance. My aunt sent me a group message saying, "We all need to pitch in so Rachel's day is perfect. If you can't contribute, maybe you should reconsider coming." That stung because now attendance itself felt contingent on money. I eventually told them that I would still attend the wedding, but I wouldn't be covering any of the costs. I made it clear I wanted to celebrate with Rachel, but I couldn't finance her wedding. That conversation did not go well. My aunt accused me of being selfish, and my cousin said she understood but was disappointed. Other family members started messaging me, with a mix of guilt-tripping and "why can't you just help?" The tension escalated when my aunt brought it up at Thanksgiving. She told everyone that I refused to support family, and even compared me to some distant cousin who had skipped out on contributing to a sibling's wedding. I felt blindsided and unfairly targeted because I had never agreed to any financial obligation, yet suddenly I was the villain in a story I didn't sign up for. I ended up leaving the dinner early because the comments got heated. Since then, I've noticed subtle cold shoulders from family members who are attending the wedding. Rachel still talks to me occasionally, but our conversations are strained. Part of me feels like I'm being unreasonable for standing my ground, but another part feels like my boundaries are being completely ignored. So, Reddit, AITA here for refusing to pay thousands of dollars toward my cousin's wedding, even though she and my aunt suggested it. I genuinely want to support her emotionally and celebrate with her, but I can't justify this kind of financial burden, and the family drama is making it really hard to enjoy what should be a happy occasion. I don't want my refusal to contribute to ruin my relationship with my cousin or the rest of the family, but I also feel like if I cave now, it'll set a precedent for future situations where my financial situation becomes a tool for guilt. I've tried to make compromises and be supportive in other ways, but I feel like I'm being labeled the villain for having limits. AITA? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's dream wedding after she completely ignored my input. So, this is going to be long, but I need some perspective because I'm torn between feeling justified and feeling like a huge jerk. I, 29F, have a younger sister, Emily, 26F, and our relationship has always been a bit strained. Not like horrifically so, but enough that we don't confide in each other about everything. I was actually really close to her growing up, but the last few years we've drifted. Emily got engaged about a year ago, and immediately she went all in on wedding planning. She has a vision, which is fine, but I quickly realized she wasn't really open to input from anyone. She sent me a save the date months in advance, which was normal, and then one day she called me and said she wanted to meet to discuss her ideas for the bridal party. I was excited because I've been her older sister and have always been someone she could rely on for advice. Here's where it started to go downhill. She told me she had decided on all of her bridesmaids' dresses, including mine, and they were from this boutique that was very expensive. I told her I honestly didn't have the money to drop $450 on a dress that I would probably only wear once, and I asked if there was an alternative or a compromise. She flat out said no. She then started lecturing me about how the wedding was a once-in-a-lifetime event and how she didn't want me to look cheap in her photos. I felt like she was guilting me over something I genuinely couldn't afford. I suggested maybe I could help her pick another dress from the same style, or perhaps she could cover part of it, but she refused every suggestion. She also insisted I get my hair and makeup done at her recommended salon, which was an additional $300. I explained that this, combined with the dress, would be financially impossible for me, and I tried to offer alternative solutions. Emily basically said I was being unsupportive and that if I really loved her, money wouldn't matter. Fast forward a few months, and she's also chosen our hotel arrangements, flights, and even the schedule of pre-wedding events. I was supposed to fly out for the bridal shower, but she scheduled it the same weekend. I had a work conference I couldn't miss. I told her I couldn't make it and suggested maybe a virtual hangout. She blew up at me, saying I was choosing my career over my family, which really hurt because I thought she knew I was passionate about my work and that I always try to prioritize family when I can. A month ago, she finalized the wedding guest list, and I noticed she had invited all of my extended family, including some cousins I barely know, but had not invited my closest friends, people I consider family, who have supported both of us throughout our lives. When I pointed this out, she said, "It's not about your friends, it's about me and my vision." I started feeling like she didn't care about my feelings at all, and that the wedding wasn't going to be about celebrating our family coming together, but about her image. Now, the wedding is in 2 weeks. She called me yesterday to make sure I had everything ready: dress, hair, makeup, shoes, etc. I told her I wasn't comfortable spending that much money and that I would prefer to come as a guest, in my own dress, or not attend at all if she couldn't compromise. She completely lost it. She accused me of trying to ruin her wedding and said she didn't even know if she could consider me her sister anymore. I'm honestly heartbroken because I love my sister and I've always tried to be there for her, but I can't justify spending thousands of dollars just to make her happy for one day when it would put me in debt and cause me stress. My parents are on her side, saying I should just suck it up and spend the money, but I feel like they don't understand how controlling she's been about every detail and how little she's considered my financial situation. I've been debating all night whether to just show up and fake a smile for the photos, but I'm worried I'll resent her for it for years, and it will ruin our relationship even further. Part of me wants to send a gift and a heartfelt letter apologizing for not being able to make it, explaining my reasons and how much I love her. But another part of me wonders if I'm overreacting and being petty. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding under these circumstances? I genuinely feel like she's making it about control and image rather than celebrating our family. But everyone around me says I should just be a good sister. I don't want to destroy our relationship, but I also don't want to sacrifice my mental health and financial stability for one day. I'm not proud of potentially skipping her wedding, but I also feel like I've tried to compromise, and she's been completely unwilling to meet me halfway. I just don't know if I'm being unreasonable. Has anyone experienced something similar? I could really use some perspective. AITA for refusing to let my younger sister's fiancé stay in my house after an argument about my dog. This is going to be a bit long, so bear with me. I, 32F, have a dog, Max, who is basically my kid. He's a rescue and has some anxiety issues, which means I have to be very careful about his environment. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment, and I've spent years making it a safe, calm space for him. My younger sister, Emily, 27F, has always been a bit more impulsive, let's say. She's been dating her fiancé, Mark, 30M, for about 2 years now. Emily and I are close, but she and Mark don't always respect boundaries, especially when it comes to pets. A couple of weeks ago, Emily and Mark were supposed to come over for dinner. I told them in advance that Max gets anxious around new people, especially men he hasn't met before. I asked that Mark not bring his friend, who apparently has a large dog, because Max does not react well to unfamiliar dogs. They agreed. When they arrived, Mark brought his friend's dog anyway, claiming it would be fine and that Max just needed to be socialized. I tried to explain again that Max has serious anxiety issues, but Mark dismissed it, saying it's just a dog. It's not a big deal. Within minutes, Max started barking and lunging, and eventually nipped at the other dog. The situation escalated quickly, and Mark's friend got a small scratch on his hand. Thankfully, it wasn't serious, but it was enough to ruin the evening. I asked them to leave. Emily was upset, saying I overreacted and that Max should learn to deal with people. I was upset because Max is part of my family, and his well-being is non-negotiable. I didn't want to risk him getting hurt, or someone else getting hurt again. Fast forward a week, Emily calls me crying because she and Mark got into a fight. She said Mark had planned to stay over at my place while they sorted things out because she needed a neutral space and that I should let him crash for a couple of nights. I told her I couldn't do that. I explained everything again: Max's anxiety, the previous incident, and the fact that my apartment isn't set up for a temporary house guest, especially one who might bring other people or dogs over. Emily got really angry, accusing me of being pet-obsessed and unreasonable. She said Mark is her fiancé and that as her older sister, I should support her, even if it's inconvenient. I refused, and she hung up. Since then, Emily has been posting passive-aggressive things on social media about how some people care more about a dog than family, and subtly mentioning how I'm impossible to visit and never supportive. She's also told our parents, who are upset with me and think I should have at least let Mark stay one night. I tried explaining the situation calmly to them, but they feel I'm overreacting. Here's where I get some pushback from friends. Some say I'm being too rigid, that it's just a couple of nights, and that I could have made it work if I was creative, like letting Mark sleep in the guest room or keeping Max in a separate area. But the thing is, I've done that before with temporary guests, and even when Max is in another room, he's still stressed and has tried to escape or bark at the guest. This isn't me being dramatic. It's a pattern that's been documented by my vet. I just don't want to risk another incident. I love Emily and Mark, but I also love Max and his mental health. I feel like I'm being painted as the villain just for setting boundaries for my own home and my own dog. I've offered alternatives, like letting them stay at a nearby Airbnb, and even offered to host dinner at a neutral location, but apparently that's not enough. I'm torn because part of me wants to keep the peace, but another part of me knows that letting Mark stay, knowing the risk to Max and the potential chaos, is a hard no. I also worry that if I give in this time, I'll have to keep giving in for every minor inconvenience, and that's not healthy for me or Max. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after the dog incident, even though she says it's just for a couple of nights? Edit, to clarify, I'm not opposed to hosting Emily herself, just Mark staying alone, especially after the previous incident. My apartment is very small, and I can't comfortably separate Max from another guest without extreme stress. Character count, 6670. Hey friends, if you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. We genuinely want to know what you enjoy and what we can improve. What did you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future uploads? Your feedback helps us get better every day. Thanks for sticking with us. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancé dictate my wedding. So this is going to be long, but I need to get this off my chest. 28F, am getting married in about 6 months to my fiancé, Dan, 30M. We've been together for 5 years, and we're both excited and nervous about the wedding planning process. My brother, Jake, 32M, recently got engaged to his fiancée, Claire, 29F, about a year ago. They've been together for 4 years, and she's a very opinionated person. That's putting it mildly. She tends to insert herself into situations where she isn't really needed, and she likes things done her way. I didn't think much of it until wedding planning became a real thing. When Dan and I got engaged, we decided early on that we wanted a relatively small wedding, about 100 guests, nothing too extravagant. We booked a venue we loved and started sending out save-the-dates. Everything was going smoothly until my brother got involved. He and Claire came over to see the venue after we booked it. And as soon as Claire walked in, she started pointing out how the flowers here are all wrong, and the lighting is terrible for photos. She didn't ask for opinions. She basically told us what we were doing wrong. Dan and I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe she just had a different taste. Then things escalated. A few weeks later, she called me out of the blue and said, "I think you should reconsider your menu. I have a lot of experience with catering and parties, and your choices are too basic. I can help you make it better." I politely said no and explained we had already booked the catering and were happy with our menu. She didn't take no for an answer and kept sending me links to better options for appetizers, main courses, and desserts. I blocked her on one of her group chat threads out of frustration, and that's when the real drama started. Claire started telling people in our family that I wasn't including her in the wedding planning and that I was being unreasonable. My parents, who are normally supportive, started subtly suggesting that maybe I should listen to Claire. She's really good at organizing things. I felt like I was being cornered. It wasn't just the food either. She tried to influence the guest list, the wedding colors, and even the seating arrangements. The most ridiculous thing was when she told me my bridesmaid dresses were all wrong for the season, and that she had a designer friend who could fix them. Again, I said no, explaining that my bridesmaids had already picked their dresses and I wanted them to be comfortable. Claire's reaction was immediate. She stormed over to my parents' house and started a confrontation about how ungrateful and stubborn I was. At this point, I realized she wasn't going to stop unless I set firm boundaries. I talked to my parents and explained that while I appreciated their input, this was my wedding and I needed it to reflect me and Dan, not Claire's vision. My parents nodded, but then had a private conversation with Claire, which I wasn't a part of. The next thing I know, Claire starts telling family members that I am ignoring family traditions and being selfish. It spread quickly, and now even extended family were asking me if I was going to let Claire help plan things. I tried to ignore it, but the tension kept building. One of the final straws was a week ago when she texted me a 10-page document with suggestions for your wedding timeline and marked sections like musts and highly recommended. She even included a spreadsheet with backup vendors. I called her and told her firmly that I appreciated the effort, but this was not helpful and that I did not want her involved in the planning. She screamed at me on the phone, saying that I was driving a wedge between Jake and me, and that I was being ungrateful for her expertise. I hung up. Yesterday, my brother Jake called me. He said that Claire was crying because I was alienating her, and that she felt unwelcome in the family. He also implied that I was being harsh and that maybe I should let her have some say in the wedding. I told him that my wedding is about me and Dan, and we are happy to have him there, but Claire has no place dictating our choices. He sighed and said he understood, but that it would be easier if I compromised. I felt my blood boil because I have compromised in small ways, like letting her help pick music for the ceremony. But every suggestion she has made ends up being a criticism or an attempt to take control. I haven't talked to Claire since that phone call, and I honestly don't know what to do. My parents keep asking me to make peace, my brother is stuck in the middle, and my extended family seems to be subtly blaming me for the tension. I feel like if I bend at all, I'll lose control over my wedding entirely. Dan supports me 100%, and he says I am right to draw boundaries, but I can't help feeling guilty about the family drama. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancé have any say in my wedding planning? Or am I being unreasonable by wanting her completely out of the process? AITA for refusing to let my sister's partner stay in my house, even though they're family? I, 32F, have always been very clear about boundaries in my home. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment in the city, and while I love my family, I value my space and privacy a lot. My sister, Emma, 28F, has been dating her boyfriend, Jake, 30M, for about a year. From the start, I liked him enough, but I never felt a super close bond. That's fine, I thought. Everyone has their own dynamic. Things started to get complicated a few months ago. Emma and Jake decided to take a weekend trip to the city where I live. She asked if they could stay at my apartment since she didn't want to pay for a hotel and I could host them for a night or two. I told her I didn't feel comfortable hosting them overnight because my apartment is small and I like to have personal space. Emma seemed upset but said she would understand, and they booked a hotel instead. No big deal. Fast forward a few weeks, Emma called me panicked. Apparently, she and Jake had a fight and she had nowhere to go. She asked if they could stay at my place for a few days while things settled down. I reminded her gently that my apartment really isn't set up for guests and that I need my space, especially for more than one night. She said, "Come on, it's just a couple of nights. You wouldn't let us crash in the street, would you? You love me, don't you?" I felt cornered. I told her I do love her, but this wasn't about love. It was about boundaries. She ended up staying with a friend. Then things escalated. A few weeks later, Emma's apartment flooded. She called me crying, saying she had nowhere to go and begged me to let her and Jake stay for a week. I refused, and this time she started sending guilt-laden messages. "You're my sister. You let your family stay, right? I can't believe you're choosing your apartment over your own blood. Jake and I have nowhere else. What kind of sister are you?" I tried explaining that I'm not comfortable hosting guests long-term, especially in my tiny apartment, but she wouldn't hear it. She accused me of being selfish and cruel, saying I was choosing comfort over family. I didn't reply immediately, hoping she would calm down, but she escalated by showing up at my door unannounced. I wasn't home, but my neighbor called me and said there was someone knocking and asking to use my apartment because her sister was being unreasonable. When I got home, I confronted her. Emma claimed that since we're family, I owe her a place to stay. I told her firmly that no, I don't owe anyone overnight stays in my home and that she should respect my boundaries. She left angry, but I could tell Jake was sulking and muttering that I'm cold and ungrateful. The situation got worse when Emma started posting passive-aggressive things on social media, tagging me in posts about family loyalty, and sharing screenshots of my refusals framed in a way that made me look heartless. Several relatives reached out, asking me why I wouldn't help Emma and Jake. I explained the situation as calmly as possible, emphasizing that it's about boundaries and living arrangements, not about loving or not loving her. Some relatives sided with me, but others said I was being unreasonable and letting a guest down in a time of crisis. A few days ago, Emma texted again. She wants to stay with me for an indefinite period because she's looking for a new apartment. She wrote, "I can't just sleep on the floor of my friend's place. You're my sister. Please. It's only temporary." I haven't replied because I feel like no matter what I say, she'll frame me as the villain. My boyfriend says I'm completely justified, that I shouldn't feel guilty for wanting privacy. My parents, however, have called and hinted that maybe I should be more understanding and think of family first. I feel trapped. On one hand, I don't want to hurt my sister or cause family drama. On the other hand, I genuinely feel that letting Emma and Jake stay in my small apartment for an indefinite period would be a huge strain on me, my relationship, and my mental health. I've tried suggesting alternatives like helping her find a temporary sublet or assisting with hotel costs, but she rejects every idea. Now, my social media has become a minefield of family-related guilt, and my sister refuses to speak to me in person. Jake still posts subtle digs about me being so cold and so selfish. I feel like the world is painting me as a bad sister just because I'm asserting a boundary that's critical for my well-being. I really want to maintain my relationship with Emma, but I also don't want to compromise my personal space and sanity. I feel like if I give in, I will regret it deeply, and it will set a precedent for future situations. At the same time, I'm constantly bombarded by messages implying that family loyalty should override everything. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her boyfriend stay in my apartment, even though they're technically family. Character count, 6,456. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what she did to my fiancé. I, 29F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 26F, though our relationship has had its ups and downs. Growing up, she was the kind of sister who could be sweet one moment and manipulative the next. I've generally tried to rise above the drama, But what happened recently has left me questioning whether I should even consider her family part of my life anymore. I've been with my fiancé, Mark, 31M, for 6 years. He's an amazing guy, kind, funny, and incredibly patient. We met in college, and from the start, we had a solid relationship. We got engaged last year, and while wedding planning has been stressful for both of us, it's been mostly positive. Our families get along, and I thought everything was on track for a happy future. Emily, however, has always had a flair for drama. She's a wedding enthusiast, and she's always dreamed about her perfect day since she was a teenager. She's dating someone new now, Tom, 28M, and they've been together for about a year. When she got engaged, she immediately began planning her wedding in a way that seemed more like she was trying to one-up me than anything else. Honestly, I brushed it off at first because weddings bring out competitiveness in people sometimes, and I didn't want to spoil her excitement. The problem started a few months ago. Emily had invited me over to help with wedding details, which I assumed was typical sisterly bonding. She then started asking questions about my engagement, our wedding plans, and my fiancé in a way that felt more invasive than helpful. At first, I answered politely, but soon I noticed she was asking leading questions, trying to find out things she could twist or use. Things came to a head last week. Emily threw a small pre-wedding brunch with close friends and family to show off her engagement ring and celebrate with everyone before the wedding. She invited me and Mark, but she made it clear she wanted me to be there as her guest, not as her sister. When we arrived, everything seemed fine until the toast. Emily got up and, in front of everyone, started talking about how perfect men are hard to find. And then she mentioned Mark's old college ex in a joking but very pointed way. She laughed and said, "I guess some guys just never learn, huh?" Everyone laughed nervously, and Mark looked uncomfortable. I was shocked, but I tried to let it slide, thinking maybe I was overreacting. Afterwards, she cornered me in the kitchen and said, "Don't tell Mark, I was just joking. Some men really need to be humbled before they can appreciate a good woman." I was furious. I confronted her about how inappropriate and disrespectful that was, especially in front of family and friends. She smirked and said, "Lighten up. It was just a little fun. You're too sensitive." I was too upset to respond, so I left early. Mark was quiet the entire ride home, clearly upset. When we got home, he told me he felt humiliated and was thinking about confronting her himself. I told him not to because I didn't want to escalate it, but I also made it clear that Emily's behavior was unacceptable. Since then, Emily has been sending me passive-aggressive texts, accusing me of being dramatic and ruining her excitement. She also told our mom that I was being unreasonable and that I was jealous of her wedding. My mom has always tried to stay neutral, but she admitted she was concerned about how Emily treated Mark at the brunch. The wedding is in 3 weeks, and she sent me a formal invite. I don't feel comfortable attending after what she did. I can't imagine being in the same room as her and having her make more passive-aggressive remarks about my fiancé or me. Mark agrees with me, but he also worries that not attending will cause a huge family rift. I try to explain to Emily that I won't attend, citing how she humiliated Mark and how I won't put myself or him through that. But she accused me of stealing her spotlight and being selfish. Now, other family members are trying to guilt me into going, saying things like, "It's just one night. Don't let her antics ruin your relationship with the family," or "You're overreacting. It was just a joke." I feel like they don't understand that it wasn't just a joke. It was a deliberate attempt to embarrass Mark. I also feel like if I go, I'll be condoning her behavior, and I can't do that. Mark and I have discussed it thoroughly. We've decided that our own wedding is going to be private and small, with no drama or attention-seeking behavior allowed. But now, I'm worried about the fallout from Emily's wedding. Part of me feels guilty for skipping a family event, but another part feels justified in protecting my fiancé from someone who has clearly shown disrespect and a lack of boundaries. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after the way she treated my fiancé. I want to emphasize that I haven't done anything else to Emily besides be polite until this incident. I don't want to escalate drama, but I also feel like this is a matter of respect. I'm prepared for family backlash, but I'm also prepared to stand firm for Mark and myself. It's hard because I do care about Emily, but I can't ignore this behavior. I know weddings can bring out competitive or dramatic behavior in people, but this felt personal and targeted. I just want to make sure I'm not the one in the wrong here. Character count: 6,245. Would you like me to expand it slightly to hit closer to 6,500 to 7,000 characters for maximum Reddit-style impact? AITA for refusing to host my sister's surprise wedding in my house even though she's my maid of honor. I, 28F, have always been close to my younger sister, Lily, 25F. Growing up, we were inseparable, and even though adult life has pulled us in different directions, we still talk almost every day. Our relationship has generally been very strong, but something came up recently that's caused a massive rift, and I can't tell if I'm being unreasonable. Lily has been dating her fiancé, Mark, 27M, for about 4 years. They've been through a lot together and are very serious. So when she told me she wanted to get married sooner rather than later, I was genuinely happy. What I didn't expect was what came next. About 2 months ago, Lily approached me out of the blue and said, "I want to have a surprise wedding, and I want to do it at your place." At first, I thought she was joking. She explained that she didn't want a traditional wedding and instead wanted something small and intimate with just close friends and family, and she thought my house would be the perfect venue. She insisted that I would be her maid of honor, of course. Here's the thing. I live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a building that barely allows overnight guests. My living room is maybe 15 by 12 feet. My kitchen is functional but tiny, and the entire space could comfortably host 12 people max. I don't have any outdoor area, no backyard, nothing. On top of that, my landlord is notoriously strict. Parties and large gatherings are technically against my lease, and I've already had to deal with complaints from neighbors about noise a few times. When I told her all this, Lily waved it off. "It'll be fine. We'll just make it work. We'll only invite a handful of people. We can rent a tent or something outside if it rains." I already picked the date. The date she picked was literally 6 weeks away. I explained that her idea sounded like a logistical nightmare, not to mention stressful for me, since she was essentially expecting me to plan and host a wedding in my tiny apartment at the drop of a hat. She got upset, saying I was overreacting and that I always have an excuse for everything. I reminded her that weddings are big events, and even a small wedding requires coordination, space, and a budget. She said she'd handle all the decorations and catering, and all I would have to do is let people into my apartment. I tried to reason with her. Even if you provide food and decorations, this is still my home. There will be dozens of people coming in and out. What if someone spills wine on the carpet, breaks something, or annoys my neighbors? I'm not comfortable with that. Her argument escalated quickly. She told me that I was being selfish and that as her sister, and especially as her maid of honor, I should be thrilled to help her make this happen. She said she didn't understand why I was making it about me and that she felt like I didn't support her marriage. I suggested alternatives. We could look for a small venue, a park, or even a friend's larger home. I even offered to help her coordinate those options. But she kept insisting that my apartment was the perfect location because it was where we had so many memories growing up and because it was intimate and personal. I finally told her I wouldn't host it. I explained that it wasn't personal against her. It was literally about my living situation, my lease, and my neighbors. She got extremely emotional and accused me of not loving her enough to be part of this special moment. She started crying and left my apartment after a very heated phone call. After that, our communication has been strained. She's unfollowed me on social media and hasn't replied to several of my messages. Our parents are upset with me too. They told me that it would be a once-in-a-lifetime experience and that I was being stubborn. I tried to explain the practical reasons, but they just said I should make sacrifices for family. Meanwhile, I feel like I'm being punished for setting reasonable boundaries. Hosting a surprise wedding in a tiny apartment 6 weeks away is not only impractical, but stressful. I love my sister, but I also have to consider my own space, budget, and peace of mind. I even offer to help her in every other way possible, finding a venue, organizing decorations, arranging catering, even helping with guest lists, but nothing seems to satisfy her. Some friends say I'm right to refuse, while others say I should put family first and just let her have her dream wedding at my place. I just don't know anymore. I want to be a supportive sister, but I also don't want to feel resentful or have a nightmare wedding experience in my own home. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's surprise wedding in my apartment, even though she wants me to be her maid of honor. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. I, 29F, have a complicated relationship with my sister, Jenna, 32F. We grew up in a small, close-knit family where everyone was expected to maintain appearances and family obligations above all else. I've always been more independent-minded and outspoken, while Jenna tends to follow tradition and placate others, even when it's at the expense of her own feelings. Despite our differences, I genuinely love my sister, which is why this situation has been tearing me apart. About a year ago, Jenna met her now fiancé, Mark, 34M. At first, he seemed charming and polite. Over time, however, I began noticing patterns in his behavior that worried me. He is controlling, dismissive, and has a tendency to belittle people subtly in public, which many don't catch at first. For instance, he frequently interrupts Jenna when she's speaking, corrects her in front of friends and family, and makes offhand remarks that are clearly intended to undermine her confidence. Initially, I brushed it off, thinking maybe I was reading too much into it, but over time, it became harder to ignore. The tipping point for me came about 3 months ago. My sister and I were out for brunch, and I brought up my concerns about Mark in a gentle, non-confrontational way. I mentioned that I'd noticed him dismissing her ideas and opinions in front of family, and I asked if she was okay with that dynamic. Jenna got defensive immediately. She said, "You don't know him like I do. He's just teasing sometimes. You always make things into a bigger deal than they are." I tried to explain that it didn't feel like teasing, but she shut down the conversation entirely and changed the topic. Since then, I've watched more interactions between them that made me uncomfortable. He has a habit of gaslighting Jenna's feelings, and he tries to control her decisions, including ones that affect the family. I've also noticed that he subtly manipulates family gatherings to position himself as the center of attention, often at Jenna's expense. I have never confronted him directly because I feel it's not my place, but I have made my sister aware multiple times of what I've observed. Fast forward to now, Jenna's wedding is in 6 weeks. I was initially looking forward to it, thinking it would be a chance for us to enjoy a happy day together. However, as the wedding planning has progressed, I've become increasingly uncomfortable. Mark has been making demands that affect family dynamics, insisting on certain seating arrangements, and even questioning the way Jenna wants to handle aspects of the ceremony. Last week, he called me personally to remind me that I needed to RSVP promptly and behave myself at the wedding. The tone was condescending, and he implied that if I caused any issues, it would reflect poorly on Jenna. I felt insulted and controlled, and I realized I could no longer in good conscience support or participate in this event. I called Jenna to explain that I would not be attending the wedding. I tried to be gentle, focusing on my feelings rather than accusing Mark directly, saying that I did not feel comfortable attending an event where I would likely be treated disrespectfully. Jenna reacted poorly. She accused me of trying to control her life, said I was selfish for putting my feelings above her special day, and claimed that my absence would ruin the family dynamic and cause tension among relatives. I told her I understood her perspective, but that my decision was about preserving my mental health, not punishing her. Since then, our family has been divided. Some relatives side with Jenna, saying I should just suck it up and attend for the sake of the family. Others privately tell me they understand my decision and share that they've also felt uncomfortable around Mark. The problem is that the wedding is fast approaching, and Jenna has made it clear she does not want to discuss the matter further. My parents are upset with me, and I've received messages from extended family expressing disappointment and confusion about why I'm throwing away my relationship with Jenna over one person. I've thought about compromising by attending only the ceremony and leaving before the reception, but I feel like that would still put me in close proximity to Mark and might trigger conflict. I've considered sending a heartfelt letter expressing my support for Jenna, but explaining my absence. But even that feels like it might be interpreted as judgmental or confrontational. I keep going back and forth in my mind. On one hand, I want to support my sister on one of the biggest days of her life. On the other hand, I feel that attending would mean tolerating behavior that is harmful and unacceptable, and I cannot do that without compromising my own boundaries. I'm worried that my choice will permanently damage my relationship with my sister and the rest of the family, but I also feel like staying true to my values is more important. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior, even though it will hurt her and cause family tension. AITA for refusing to pay for my younger brother's wedding after he insulted me in front of the whole family. So, some context first. I, 32M, have an older sister and a younger brother, 28M, and our parents are divorced. I've always been the more financially stable sibling. I work in tech and have been fortunate enough to buy my own house, travel, and generally live comfortably. My brother, on the other hand, has had a rougher time. He's always been a bit reckless with money, often switching jobs, and struggles with budgeting. A few months ago, my brother got engaged to his girlfriend of 3 years, and he immediately started talking about a big wedding. I won't lie, I was excited for him and happy he'd found someone he loved, but when the topic of costs came up, things got tricky. Our parents are fairly well off, but they aren't covering the entire thing. My brother mentioned that he wanted me to contribute a significant chunk because I make more money. At first, I didn't think much of it and said I'd help with some of the vendor costs, like flowers or photography, maybe a few $1,000s in total. I didn't commit to anything beyond that because I wasn't comfortable paying for the majority of a wedding for someone in their late 20s who can technically pay for themselves with some planning. A couple weeks later, my brother called me and said that the total wedding budget was around $45,000 and he was expecting me to pay half. I told him that was unreasonable. I said I could contribute $5,000 at most, maybe a bit more if necessary, but not half. He got upset and started going on about how I always have been selfish and never helped family, which honestly shocked me. I tried to reason with him, explaining that helping a little doesn't mean I'm obligated to cover tens of thousands, but he didn't want to hear it. The situation escalated when we had a family dinner to discuss wedding plans with our parents. I mentioned again that I could help, but not with half of the budget. My brother's fiancée, who I hadn't spent much time with before, chimed in and said, "Well, he's the rich one, so he should just pay. It's not like he needs the money anyway." I was stunned, but before I could respond, my brother loudly said, "Yeah, why can't you just do the right thing for once? You always think you're better than everyone else." This was in front of my mom, dad, and sister. I felt humiliated. I got up, told them I wasn't comfortable being treated like a walking ATM, and left. I tried to have a calm conversation with my brother later, but he refused to speak to me. A few days later, my sister texted me saying that the family thinks I'm being petty and ruining the wedding vibe by not paying half. My parents also mentioned that I should consider how my refusal affects my brother emotionally. I get that weddings are emotional, but I feel like asking someone to cover more than half of a $45,000 wedding and then insulting them when they say no is unreasonable. Since then, my brother has blocked me on social media, and my parents are subtly pressuring me to just pay up. My sister keeps sending me passive-aggressive messages about how family should support family, and I feel like everyone is ganging up on me. I don't want to pay tens of thousands just to keep the peace, especially after being insulted in front of everyone. AITA here? I feel like I'm in the right, but now the whole family seems to think I'm the villain. I genuinely want to support my brother, but I also feel like there are boundaries, and I shouldn't have to be financially responsible for someone else's extravagant decisions, especially when I'm treated with disrespect. I've considered just giving in and paying half to avoid family drama, but I also worry that it will set a precedent where I'm always expected to bail people out financially. My friends think I'm justified, but I feel torn because, well, it's my brother, and it hurts to feel like the family is turning against me. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to pay half of my brother's wedding after being insulted in front of the family? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé have his way with our family Christmas tradition? I, 32F, come from a family that is extremely traditional when it comes to holidays. Christmas has always been sacred in my household, and we have a very specific way of doing things that has barely changed in the 20-plus years I've been alive. Every year, my parents host a large Christmas dinner at their house, and it's a full-day event. We do everything from baking cookies with my mom, hanging up our old family ornaments that have sentimental value, and ending the night with a reading of the Christmas story from the Bible, which has always been a big deal for us because of our faith. After the reading, we open presents in the order of youngest to oldest, and everyone participates in a big group hug at the end. It's chaotic, yes, but it's always been meaningful for us, and it's kind of the glue that keeps the family together. A few years ago, my younger sister, 28F, started dating a guy named Alex, 30M. At first, he was quiet and polite, but over the last few years, he's become increasingly controlling and insistent about how things should be done, especially when it comes to family gatherings. He's very rigid about his own traditions and has made it clear multiple times that our way of celebrating is outdated and unnecessary. My sister has generally tried to keep the peace, but it's obvious that she's caught between respecting our family traditions and not wanting to upset Alex. This year, the tension reached its peak. A few weeks before Christmas, Alex sent a message to my parents saying that he thought it would be better if we modernized our holiday traditions. His suggestions included skipping the Bible reading entirely because he thinks it's exclusive, letting people exchange gifts whenever they wanted instead of following the youngest to oldest order, and not baking cookies because it's a waste of time. My parents were taken aback, but polite. They tried to explain that these traditions aren't just random rituals. They're deeply personal and meaningful to our family. I jumped in and told Alex directly that I wasn't going to allow anyone to dictate how our family celebrates Christmas. My reasoning was that Christmas has always been about more than just gifts or decoration for us. It's about continuity, family, and remembering our upbringing. Alex didn't take this well. He told my sister that I was controlling and selfish and that I was ruining their ability to celebrate Christmas in their own way. My sister was caught in the middle, but ultimately backed me up in private, saying she didn't want to lose the tradition she grew up with either. When we arrived at my parents' house on Christmas Eve, Alex tried to impose his ideas anyway. He loudly refused to participate in the Bible reading, tried to hand out gifts as soon as people arrived, and scoffed at the cookies my mom had made. I finally snapped when he tried to take the presents out of my younger cousin's hands and insist that we exchange gifts in a more modern order. I told him firmly that he was not going to dictate how Christmas was celebrated in our home. I reminded him that he was a guest and that it was disrespectful to undermine years of tradition in favor of his personal preferences. My parents supported me, my siblings all nodded in agreement, and Alex sat quietly, glaring for the rest of the evening. After Christmas, Alex sent my sister a long text saying I had ruined everything and that he didn't want to attend family events in the future. He also called me controlling and unreasonable in the process. My parents and other family members have all thanked me for standing up to him and protecting our traditions. My sister seems upset that he's so angry, but she also agreed privately that I did the right thing. The conflict is ongoing because Alex refuses to come to any family events now, and my sister is feeling torn between him and her family. Some of my distant relatives have suggested I should have compromised to keep the peace, but compromising in a way that erases the traditions that define our family feels wrong to me. On the other hand, I am aware that my refusal to accommodate Alex may be causing a rift for my sister. So AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé change our family Christmas traditions, even though it has caused tension between him and my family. AITA for refusing to let my in-laws move in permanently after they retired. I, 34M, have been married to my wife, Jenna, 33F, for almost 10 years. We have 2 kids, ages 7 and 4. For context, we both come from large families, but we've always made an effort to establish our own household and boundaries. Jenna and I bought a house 5 years ago, and although it's not huge, it's comfortable for our family of 4. About a year ago, Jenna's parents started talking about retirement. They live about an hour away from us and have always been somewhat controlling, particularly with Jenna. They've never been malicious, but they tend to drop by unannounced, comment on how we raise the kids, and have a hard time respecting our choices. A few months ago, they started hinting that they were considering selling their house and moving closer, with the possibility of living with us. At first, We were open to the idea of them being nearby, but made it clear that permanent cohabitation was off the table. We suggested they rent a nearby apartment or even a house in the same neighborhood, so that we could have family proximity without feeling like we were being invaded. My wife seemed to understand, but over the past few months, the hints became more direct. Last week, Jenna's mom brought up the idea of selling their house and moving in with us permanently. She framed it as helping us out with the kids and being closer to family. I immediately said no. I explained that our house simply isn't large enough for 4 adults and 2 kids, and that living together full-time would put too much strain on our family dynamic. I suggested again that they could find a place nearby, which would allow them to spend time with the grandkids and still have independence. Jenna got very upset with me. She said I was being selfish and that I was rejecting her parents in a way that wasn't fair. She reminded me that her parents helped her a lot growing up, that they are retired now, and that they deserve to enjoy family life. She also mentioned that she felt guilty for thinking about having them nearby, but not fully accepting them into our home. Things escalated over the next few days. Jenna argued that I was being rigid and unkind. She said I wasn't considering how lonely they might feel if they sold their house and didn't live with us. I tried to be empathetic but stuck to my stance. Having them live with us permanently would create tension and probably lead to resentment on all sides. I also mentioned that we can help them get settled in a nearby place, and that I would spend time with them and encourage the kids to do the same. Jenna said that this made her feel like I don't value family, and that I'm prioritizing my comfort over hers. I reminded her that we need to prioritize the well-being of our immediate family first, especially with 2 young kids. She accused me of trying to control her and guilt-tripping her parents. Her parents found out about the disagreement and reached out to Jenna. They said they would consider renting nearby, but made a comment that it wouldn't be the same and that we're cold and unwelcoming. This made Jenna angrier. She's now giving me the silent treatment and barely speaking to me, while also openly venting to her friends about how unreasonable I'm being. I feel stuck because I genuinely believe that letting them move in would disrupt our family's routine, privacy, and overall happiness. I also feel like I'm being painted as the villain for having boundaries. I'm not opposed to seeing them often, helping them, and even having them over for extended visits, but permanent residency feels like a step too far. I've tried to communicate that we can compromise, help them find a nearby place, schedule regular family dinners, and involve them in kids' activities, but Jenna keeps framing this as me rejecting them entirely. Now, our relationship is tense. I feel guilty, but I also feel like standing my ground is necessary. I'm trying to navigate the line between supporting my wife and protecting our immediate family, but I'm not sure if I'm the asshole here. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my in-laws move in permanently. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss new uploads. And feel free to leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean the world to me. See you in the next video.